You know what I was thinking?
You're not going to talk about GEO again, are you?
I'm not. I'm not. I'm just, I'm leaving that on Twitter. What I'm going to talk about is self-reflection. A little bit of self-reflection after the fact. I don't want to go too deep into the election results specifically. I don't want to talk politics today.
Okay, good.
But what I do want to talk about is one of the biggest winners coming out of election night. And I think it's so wild that you guys just happened to have an election unspecial, and you had two of the CEOs running betting market companies. Because when all is said and done, when the smoke clears, when all the polls are closed, the pundits are done squawking, the opinions have been given and were wrong, largely wrong all over the place. What shined brightest was the wisdom of crowds. And we could talk about the actual polls themselves, or what people, what people actually voted, or we can just talk about Kaushy, Polly Market, predict it, maybe let's put an asterisk by that. But the point is the wisdom of crowds through the prediction markets and how much better they were, how much closer they were throughout the campaign to the reality of the outcome when all was said and done.
Why does that surprise you at all?
It's not that it surprises me, my friend, but we now have sort of this new mechanism. We have this new mechanism. I think, some people maybe had issues with polls. People had issues with media bias. And in many different ways, Kaushy and Polygon specifically, or Polymark, are sort of emerged as this, in a way, unbiased, more truthful mechanism of viewing the world of politics.
All right, well, I'm going to stop you there because you got a good rant going. I'm going to push back on all you guys, because all you guys faded the poly market. There was only one person who didn't fade the poly market, and that was me. And you actually said, I know how Bat's going to go. He's going to play the numbers. He's going to say that, it's...
Well, that's not fair, but go ahead.
It's not fair?
No, what's not fair is that
it's true.
I'm the only efficient.
And you also, all of you were talking about the whale at Poly Market, skewing the markets.
I didn't.
Or maybe you didn't, but the other people...
I'm not talking about specifically those markets, because I don't like talking about any of those markets. But I think the argument here that you're missing, Victor, and the same thing for Tony, is that we built Tasty from day one.
100%.
We built Tasty on the foundation of efficient market theory. That's all. You're just talking about something that we started this, 14 years ago, before there were any kind of election markets. I mean, one of the reasons that I've been talking to John Phillips for 7 years now, one of the reasons that I've been talking to Shane from Poly Markets and from Tariq is because I have long believed that efficient markets, need to come to everything from sports. We need to put everything on an exchange, from sports gambling to election markets to event-based stuff. I love all this stuff. Some of it I question just some of the authenticity of some of it in different places, some of the sports betting markets, some of the crypto markets, things like that. But the reality is Tasty was built on a foundation of efficient market theory. Is why should I listen to what he thinks, you think, or Joe Blow thinks, that's why we don't have guests, about certain things when there's a market out there telling us what the expected move is. There's a market out there telling us what's going on. Why do we need to listen to something else? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's never made any sense to me.
I don't disagree with you at all. I think when all is said and done, the 2024 election will be the election of the long form podcast, and it will be the election of political betting markets. I think those two things will emerge as likely staples of elections going forward.
No, you want to know something?
They didn't get everything right. I mean, the popular vote was something that they
didn't get everything right. They didn't get the houses right.
Of course, just like an Ivy.
I don't agree with you, Victor. I don't think that's the takeaway.
Okay.
I don't think that's the takeaway.
Why do you disagree first? Why do you disagree first, and then what's the takeaway?
Okay, I disagree only because I think the takeaway is something very different. I think that and I'm not saying it to play devil's advocate, I actually think the takeaway from this election cycle is, and I tried to kind of cover this yesterday with Dylan, but the takeaway from this election cycle is that you need to, if you're going to run for office and you're going to resonate with the voters, you need to understand how to articulate your vision and your accomplishments. And that is not something that that incumbents do very well. And that's not something that
This incumbent didn't do well.
no incumbent does well, and in anywhere. And that's also something that was the most obvious takeaway, I think, from this election cycle.
How's that a takeaway? The only job of an elected representative is to be able to articulate a vision. If you think that 2024, we didn't learn that, you think we didn't know that an elected leader should be able to articulate their vision for the future or their record as an incumbent, that is table stakes, my friend. It's not a takeaway of the
You would think
2024
so,
election.
you would think so, but the reality is that good CEOs, one of the things that we've learned over the years doing Tasty, one of the things we've learned doing, 2,000, 2,500 bootstrapping episodes and all this stuff that we've done over the years, one of the things that has become really important to us and very apparent is that when people come on here, they're starting a new company and they cannot articulate what their model is, what their vision is, and how they're going to create free cash flow. Their business inevitably go out of business within 2 years, and there's nothing left. And we go, what happened to that business? They're like, it's gone. And that's why 80% or 90% of startups fail. The reason that so many politicians fail and the reason that so many incumbents fail and everything else is because that same issue, the inability to articulate your strengths, your prior accomplishments, and what your vision is. And one of the most important takeaways from this election cycle is that the Democrats were not able or capable to articulate their success, period.
I respect you a lot, Tom. I really do. I think that take is so wrong.
Oh, okay.
I think it is, everybody keeps trying to say that where they missed the mark was explaining it to all the dumb people. They just didn't get it. And if you had a different message, if you used a different set of words, then all the dumb people would have gotten it. And here's what they don't understand, my friend, is that the people on the other side of that message are the ones who still do not get it. That it wasn't the articulation, that the people understood the policies. They understood that the realities of their lives. They were able to take an A/B test, and they did not vote for the outcomes that they saw in their lives that they didn't want anymore. And it was not messaging. It was not the inability to articulate. It was people who were able to measure the outcomes in their real life, and they rejected.
You're so far off base. It's not even close.
I know you think that, but
that's not what it is.
I know you'd think that, and that's the problem. And that's the problem here, is that when I turn on television, I see all these people who got it so wrong. When I see all these people, the polls were wrong, the pundits were wrong, the stories were wrong. The stories were they were propaganda. They were so far off of what the working class people in this country thought, believed, and they were so far off of the conversations they were having with their wives or husbands, with their kids, with their uncles, and with their neighbors. They were so far off. And the American people showed up to the polls in 2024. I know I'm not speaking for everybody, but I'm speaking for the outcomes of that election. And they showed you that you're wrong. They showed you that they're not dumb, that you cannot lie to them, that it's not about the stock market, it's about outcomes. It's about their outcomes in their everyday lives. And it was not the message, my friend. It would have helped. A better, more articulate vision would have helped. but I don't think the message was the problem.
In a certain way, we're saying the same thing, but I'm saying it. I'm being more brutal about it. But yes, you're trying to defend a position. You're trying to defend an untruthful position, and I'm trying to explain that it was more of an inability to articulate something that actually happened than it was disenchantment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I don't believe that.
No,
but
I think
we're never going to agree.
It's the result. I know we won't. And it's because it's the result of a K-shaped economy. It's the result of certain people living a reality of outcomes that doesn't match the reality of outcomes of another group. But that other group has the microphone. That other group has the platform. And that group is reflecting and speaking to the realities of their situation, which is in no way congruent to the other group living the bottom side of that cake.
You're living in a theoretical world that's made that whole thing up.
You got Senate, House, and governors all going red. So did that tell you that the media was giving you their narrative and not really what the people were going to say?
No, I understand what you're both saying, but you're creating a story to fit your narrative, to fit the results. That's not what actually happened. No, but anyway, you're never going to convince me.
All right, that's fair.
I've watched way too many bad CEOs. I've watched way too many really bad speakers.
No.
Yeah,
I've
watched
agreeing with you. I'm agreeing that there was bad articulation, but I'm telling you that wasn't the cause. And I think you could have put anybody in there, not run a primary, not run an open convention, not allow the will of the voice of the people to be heard. And I think 10 out of 10 times, you get the slickest talking politician to deliver that same message on the same record, you get the same outcome. And that's the problem, that people think it was the message and they still don't understand. But let me go back to your efficient market
I'm done
theory.
with this. This conversation doesn't even interest me because it's I don't believe it for 1 second. It's all garbage. Go ahead. Keep moving.
Right,
he doesn't want you in his foxhole either, but for a different reason.
Yeah, it's just I hate this argument because it's
he was never getting you in the foxhole.
You're trying
friends with this message.
You're trying to defend essentially, lying and bullshit and everything else, which just drives me crazy. I hate that message.
See, that's the problem.
I just can't stand that
binary
discussion.
whataboutism. All right. Let's go back to efficient market theory.
Yeah.
Let's go back to efficient market theory and let's apply it to policy. One of the cool things that RFK had put out, regardless of how you feel about the individual, one of the cool things he put out was something called policies for the people. Have you seen this?
I don't know what you're referring to. What is it?
Okay, so policies for the people. It's basically like JIRA, but for public policy. So basically, if you go to this website, Policies for the People, the people are able to put up basically tickets, like JIRA tickets, what policies they believe are important, and other people get to vote on those policies. So the things that people think are important, they're bubbling up to the top. People can downvote, upvote, and down. It's like Reddit, but applied to public policy.
Yeah, I know how JIRA works. I've used it many times. I got it.
I know you do. This is my point, that you have managed your companies in a very agile way. And one of the cool things about betting markets was it applied the wisdom of crowds and brought it over to politics. I know we've had it around for a century or something like that, but the point is it proliferated in this election cycle.
Okay.
What I think is cool is we are seeing I'm going to call it innovation within the political realm in an agile manner. So this policies for the people, to me, is a pretty cool idea. As long as you can get enough liquidity around it, you can see directly the policies and the issues that the people care about. And the people have a voice now to push topics or policies higher up for their elected politicians to actually address. So my point to you is just that the efficient market theory, when applied to betting markets, I think delivered a better outcome. And my question is whether or not efficient market theory, along with agile development technology methodologies, when applied to public policy, could also lead in the long term to better potential outcomes in public policy, because it gives the people and the wisdom of crowds a direct voice to the elected representatives.
Sure. I would have no issue with that at all. I mean, if you're asking me if I would have an issue with a public JIRA policy and using that approach to supplement or complement, some of the decision making or policy making on a governmental level. Sure, no, I have no issue with that at all. I like it.
All right, and then the third. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying I would have zero issue with all. I mean, public comments on things are, the regulators do it now. You can comment on any SEC, filing. You can comment. There's comment periods on everything. I don't think they're that effective, but I think they definitely have it already. Sure.
The top four, I'm going to read you really quickly, and then I'm going to give you my third one to get out of here. The first is single issue bills
please don't
for
leave
Congress.
Me alone. Please don't leave me alone.
Single issue bills, what?
A single issue bills for Congress. In other words, we stop voting on omnibus stuff with a bunch of pork in it. We vote on one issue at a time, and we get to see what the elected representatives, what their stance was on these individual issues. The second is term limits for senators and representatives.
Okay.
The third is national voter ID law. And the fourth is ban artificial food dyes, yellow 5, yellow 6, and red 40.
I don't have an issue with any of those. I mean, the only thing that would 1, 2, and 4, I have zero issue with at all. In fact, I would support the single issue ballots, or whatever you wanted to call it, single issue bills.
Single issue bills.
Yeah, no problem at all. The second one was what was the second one again?
Term limits for senators.
Term limits for sure. 100%.
No more career politicians.
Yeah,
basically what
100%. I'm 100% behind term limits for politicians. And number 4, banning certain dye, red dye, yellow dye, green dye. Sure, but get rid of them. So the only one, the third one, which is the voter registration thing, I have no issue with that either. I just wouldn't want to slow down. I think the whole process of the way we vote needs to be
paper ballots.
It needs to be kind of reinvented or reimagined, because I think it can be much more efficient. It's so slow right now, and I think that it's also disruptive. I mean, I know you can vote early, which is a nice thing, and most people did. But if you wait till election day, a lot of times, you're on a multi-hour line, and it's really slow, and it's very inefficient, and it's kind of a waste of time, and you have to work and things like that. So I do think there's problems. I wouldn't want to slow that down. But if you wanted to make voting registration, more ID driven or something like that, sure, I don't care.
Oh wow! Look at that.
None of those four things.
We're meeting in the middle here, Thomas.
Yeah, I would never. None of those 4 things bother me at all.
All right, the last little item I'm going to give you. I'm sorry, I'm running over, but
don't worry. I'm reading the chats. They're beautiful.
You've always said something. As an entrepreneur, you got to be willing and able to make deals. Just make the decision, make the deal, learn from it, good, bad, or indifferent. You've got to be willing to make deals. And I wonder if 2024 ends up being the year where we turn the page on super divisive politics and we start making deals with each other. That labor and capital start making deals with each other in the same way that we just saw Boeing and several other, the port strike and negotiation, that the only way that we can find the price of a better future is if we start negotiating with each other, sitting down and not seeing the person across from us as the Republican or the Democrat, but the counterparty to a negotiation. And we start saying, all right, this is what I'm willing to chip in. This is what I'm willing to give. What are you willing to give? And we start working towards making deals with each other, stop seeing each other as enemies and seeing each other as counterparts. I believe now more than ever, we need to start making deals with each other. I'll give that to you as sort of a final thought.
I'm not sure what you're.
And then I'll get on.
I'm not sure what you're asking. A person that loves to do deals, if we should get better at doing deals. I mean, I'm not really sure what you're asking.
I'm just saying that it's time for our government to take on Tom Sosnoff's philosophy with regards to getting things done, to finding compromise, negotiation, and getting deals done versus this locked, divisive nature where nothing gets done on behalf of the people. I'm giving you your flowers, man.
The challenge you have is that generally speaking, there is a big difference between deal makers and politicians. Politicians get paid for not making deals. I'm not sure I would blame a Boeing situation on politics or some of the, some of the various corporate situations where they can't reach an agreement on politicians. But generally speaking, politicians are not decision makers. Politicians are negotiators, and politicians are pleasers. They are not necessarily deal makers. The risk, the disingenuous part about being a politician is sometimes you don't make deals that you want to support or you believe in because you think that it will hurt your chances for reelection, and it won't have the support of your constituency, even though you believe it. And that is a very that is not something that supports quick deal making and decision making. The reason that anything gets done at all in Washington is because you're able to bury yourself, in the midst of 450 votes or 100 votes or whatever it is. And so you're able to kind of get buried in the majority or minority. And so you don't really have to stand out that much. But I agree with you. I mean, of course, term limits would solve a lot of those problems because, maybe if you don't have to worry about reelection.
You're not there just to survive anymore. You're there to express an explicit opinion.
Well, there's lots of ways to make politics better. One is term limits. Second is to create incentives, just like you would in corporate structure, so that politicians can benefit from the level of inflation, from the level of unemployment, from the strength of the economy. So that, if you really want to do it in efficient market theory style, say, listen, if you want to be a politician, fine, but here's your base salary, which is going to be minimal. And then it's enough to cover your expenses living in Washington. And everything on top of that is going to be based on how we do as a country, how the economy does. And so you're going to be focusing on different things. You're going to be fiscally responsible. You are going to make decisions that are good for everyone, not just good for a single constituent or constituency. So I think there's a lot of things we can do to make politics better. And I also think there's a lot of things that if we did that, it would give you wouldn't be able to have an election like we just had where somebody could say, hey, the world, our economy is in a horrible place and you're in a horrible place, when the reality is our economy is strong and you're not in a horrible place. You want to see a horrible place? Go here or look back, 15 years ago here. I'm just saying that if you measure everything, if you essentially quantify everything and you base everybody's pay or salary on that, then yeah, you're going to have a whole different, and you have term limits, you're going to have a whole different group of politicians, and you're going to have a whole new slew of decision makers that all of a sudden show up overnight. Because in order to get paid, they're going to have to make decisions. So you want to do that? I'm all for it.
I did not think that this conversation was going to end with agreeing with you on this take, but I agree with you 100%. The last thing I learned: never fade Tony when it comes to politics. Well done, Tony.
Oh my God.
Never fade him.